Alrighty, so I'm just going to talk you through my exemplar analysis of my poem, which was Anthem for Doomed Youth by Wilfred Owen, which has got an obvious typo there. And then obviously I've got my name and the class I am in, which is the teachers, as you may know. Alright, so at this stage I would perform the poem, preferably out loud, or obviously out loud, preferably without cue cards, or definitely not reading off the screen, as that means it's not a performance, it's a reading. If you've got a short poem, that's great, you should be able to memorize it. If you've got a longer one, maybe pick out the key section like you would a chorus from a song, or similar to that. Legacy, is it important? If you have a newer poem, it's less likely to have as much of a legacy, but you might say maybe if it's been performed at any important events, maybe they do it at, they perform the poem at the dawn service or something like that. Or perhaps a line is printed somewhere on maybe the war memorial or something like that. Try and do a little bit of research and find out how important it is to the world, or if it's not at all. Basic biographical information, don't make it too long, and don't just copy and paste from the internet, because that'll make it really boring to read. But who wrote it, when were they in a war, if yours is a war poem, or what kind of conflict relates to them. If you can try and find something that gives a bit of meaning, a bit of background, a bit of context to your poem, that would be really interesting, especially after you've performed it. Okay, so what is the message of the poem? This is your first basic, very simple reading of the poem. What is it about? What does it say? Is it positive? Is it negative? What is the poem's form? So this is where you're looking at stanzas and the structure of the piece. So how many stanzas? Is it a sonnet? Is it free verse? What type of poem is it, and how is it set out? Alright, you need to at least refer to 5 techniques. If you have spares, you could maybe refer to them as well, but mention that they're not as important or as meaningful as the 5 you've picked. For this rhetorical question, you give an example, a quote, as I've done. So it begins with a rhetorical question, and then I quote it. The purpose, why do you think it was done, and what effect it would have on the reader, which is not what I've added here, but that's what the sort of things you should be talking about. It's very similar to a text response essay, where you say who said the quote, then you provide the quote, then you say what it shows, and if you are a little bit more advanced, you might mention what the author was trying to do when they provided that. Alright, for techniques 2 and 3, I've combined mine because they fit together very neatly. This poem is very famous for having sound as a motif, alliteration and onomatopoeia all tie together in this poem in a very similar way, so I've put them together. My fourth technique, personification, again, quotes, what effect, what purpose, why do you think they did that? They could have done a million different things, but why did they choose to put personification in this poem and in the place that you're pointing out in your presentation? Number 5, extended metaphor, and for this one I've got a diagram just because it's simpler. Again, I go on and on and on about mine because I'm showing off, just to give you more examples of how you would do yours or what things you could mention. Imagery, you could maybe provide images of what it evokes in your mind as you read the poem yourself, if you want to show off a bit. Technique 7, again, I've provided the line numbers for quotes, which is good practice. I haven't done it for the rest, as you can see, but either you could show it directly, like you could maybe take a picture or scan the poem that you've drawn on, or just write the line number, whatever you prefer. And then again, I've got more techniques that I need, but that's another one, and so on, another and another. Okay, so this is where you need to do a bit of analysis, a bit of thinking. So my reading of this poem, it's a very personal thing. Again, as we've discussed in class, you can't be wrong, there's no incorrect answer, there's just interesting interpretations and more, I guess, standard interpretations. So what does the poem say to you? How does it relate to you? What does it make you think, feel? This is the tricky part. So this is where we look at critical lenses, different ways of analysing the poem. What sort of lenses could you apply to this poem, and what would they show of the poem? So I've given a feminist perspective, a communist approach, and a psychological approach. How would people following these approaches analyze this poem. It's a little bit trickier, so you might need to refer to the PowerPoint I made about this to get an idea. And the last one is pretty easy. Why you chose this poem. Try and show something personal and emotional rather than just say you picked it because it was short or it was easy or something similar to that. Alright, and that's all you need to know from my example PowerPoint, and I'll take you through the blank PowerPoint in a second.